Part 144. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1436. The Lord of Thunder glanced at his eldest disciple silently and said nothing. He has experienced the materialization of the world of meditation himself, has given guidance to his disciples, and has also seen other magicians take this step. Using mental power to attract energy and build a world that is half virtual and half real is a step that a magician must take to become a legend. Step by step, the meditation world becomes more substantial and closer to the real world. When you leap into legend, you can use your own power to open up a small demi-plane. When he first became a legend, that demi-plane was not much bigger than his study in Nevis. It was only after setting foot in legend that we patiently polished it bit by bit and collected resources bit by bit to achieve its current scale. But Gretel has just advanced to the 15th level, and the area covered by his spiritual power is half of his demi-plane. Teacher, when you were level 15, were you that big? The Lord of Thunder simply stopped looking at him. That's definitely not the case. When his mental power initially materialized, the area it covered was only enough to cover himself, a sphere from head to toe. As a disciple, he doesn't want to open any pot. The world's gifts condensed into a cloud, wrapping Gretel tightly in it. The outer shell of the cloud gradually solidified, and only various patterns kept changing. It was far away and the details were unclear, but from the old world to Nevis, to the new world and everlasting island, pieces of land and oceans were clearly visible on the surface of the clouds. This kid. The Lord of Thunder frowned and groaned. How big your heart is and how big your knowledge is, how big the world in your spiritual power is. A magician who has traveled through thousands of mountains and rivers and seen the vastness of the world. There is a whole world in the world of meditation. Today's scene is worthy of the fact that he kicked this little guy out when he was at level 9. But it's not enough, not enough. The Lord of Thunder thought silently, traveling around the world and seeing the world are just superficial. The most essential thing about the materialized world of meditation is the caster's understanding of this world. The more comprehensive and accurate the cognition is, the more stable and rich the meditation world will be. The more errors there are in cognition, the greater the deviation from this world. Not to mention failure in substantive implementation, the more troubles and difficulties you will encounter as you move forward step by step. For this little guy, Gretel, his meditation world was able to expand into such a large volume for the first time, which shows that his research and understanding of this world has been quite deep and rich. However, the little guy has always been very partial to science. He concentrates on learning the healing techniques that are useful, but he has to rush to learn a little bit of the healing techniques that are useless. Now that he has reached this point, he wonders if there is any missing aspect in his understanding of the world that would make him suffer at this level. On the top of the world tree, Cyrilla silently stretched her body, stepped back a little, and then a little further. Ever since the cloud closed in and covered Gretel in the middle, it had completely filled the circle between her neck and tail. I want to see Greet's face through the clouds, but I can't see it. I want to use my mental power to observe it, but it can't penetrate. And, that cloud. Smell good. It smells so good. She was almost confused by the fragrance. If she didn't know that this thing was of great importance, Gretel was counting on this to advance. She just wanted to lick it, and then lick it again. Well, you can't lick it, let alone chew it. Move back a little, stay away from that cloud. Lying so close, looking at the patterns on the clouds, one almost looks cross-eyed. Cyrilla took dozens of steps back before lying down again, observing the cloud without blinking. The earth emerges, the sea waves roll, the wind and clouds stir, and the tides swirl. After changing for a while, these lines gradually disappeared, and new lines continued to appear. Tiny particles, 2 particles each, 3 particles, 4 particles, 5 particles 6 particles, condensed into small groups one by one. In addition to the clustered particles, there are smaller and smaller particles floating around in circles. Occasionally, a particle is injected at high speed, breaking the middle particle group into two halves. Between the two halves, extremely strong energy burst out, enveloping high-energy particles and shooting outward again. Sarala watched for a while, her eyelids gradually drooped, and her head fell directly to the ground. These contents were all explained and demonstrated to her by Gretel. Now the surface of the cloud is bulging and it doesn't look good at all. Although she couldn't lie down in the clouds, in this position, the warm wind was blowing on her body, and the energy density around her was astonishingly high, making her feel like she was immersed in warm water. She was so sleepy. Silver Dragon's eyelids slowly closed, opened again, opened again, and closed for longer and longer. At the far edge of the circle, Elder Fahim shook his head helplessly and sighed at Idian. Such a great opportunity, it's hard for others to get close, but she actually sleeps here. Dragon. Idian also sighed. Elves are already a race favored by God. They have long lifespans, are easy to perceive the breath of nature, and have beautiful appearance. They will only age rapidly when death is imminent. However, compared with the dragon clan, it is really unacceptable. If elves are the fruits of the world tree, dragons are probably the biological children of the creator of the world. And that's the girl Gretel likes. This second sigh, Idian was careful not to say it. Gretel is willing to spend so many resources and put so much thought into his followers, just to keep cutting off his path forward. So, for the girl he likes, even if he spends all his wealth and racks his brains, he will drag her to the level of legend. Sarala can really lie down and sleep whenever she wants. In comparison, how much he suffered through life and death in order to advance to legend. Sarala, who was envied by Idian, closed her eyes, and soon fell asleep with loud snores. She was only snorting and wagging her tail, carefully avoiding Gretel. On the surface of the cloud, various patterns continue to evolve, including atoms, molecules, viruses, cells, tissues, human bodies, natural cycles, biological decomposition and metabolism. It's almost done. Why hasn't it been completed yet? Outside the world tree, the elves used their eyes and mental strength to watch from a distance. Level 15 is just the initial materialization of the meditation world, but it is not completely materialized and turned into a demi-plane. Why did it take so long? While he was muttering, a small oak tree rose from the ground in the center of the clouds. Jumping higher and higher, jumping higher and higher, the main trunk branched out into thick branches, and the thick branches branched out into thin branches. Large green leaves shrouded the clouds, like a big emerald green umbrella. Outside the umbrella, a giant black and white python was circling in circles. The snake's body enveloped the entire cloud and tree crown, its head was raised high, and the snake hesitated. The surrounding wind and clouds swirled, rolling inward, throwing themselves into the giant pythons and oak trees, and disappeared. Oh, I can't eat this by myself, so we have to eat it with 3 people. Surrounding the world tree, sighs came and went. An oak staff and a small incorporeal snake, these are all existences that have signed a contract with Gretel, and they will be both prosperous and devastated. It is indeed a good thing for Gretel that they can follow the advancement. However, seeing that they didn't do anything, oh, the oak staff still did something, it was really hard for him to act as the calculation center during this period, and he advanced together, and his life was really easy. On the oak leaves and the scales of the python, spell runes one after another, calculation formulas one after another, lit up one after another, and then disappeared into the clouds one after another. Under the dense oak leaves, crystal clear fruits buzzed and rotated, sucking in the energy gathered around them. Layers of runes and formulas flowed from the fruit to the branches, and then followed the connection between the oak staff and its owner, quickly disappearing into Gretel's meditation world. "This little guy is really lazy." From a distance, the Lord of Thunder's brows relaxed. "I have done little research, so I let the oak staff help memorize and calculate. With these things stuffed in, his foundation will be solid." "Yes." Beside him, Baebo bowed slightly and replied with a smile. "Level 15 is the first time that the world of meditation becomes substantial. It is the time to test the mage's background. Gretel can borrow strength, no matter where he borrows it from, it is good." Together they stared at the center of the world tree. When the oak tree rose from the ground just now, it had already branched out into 15 main branches, indicating that Greet's advancement to level 15, at least to level 15 priest, had been completed safely. There shouldn't be much of a problem in substantiating the meditation world. The most important thing now is what spells Gretel will inscribe after he advances to level 15. Gretel is also worried about this matter. The energy gifted by the world's will was continuously poured into his meditation world, causing substantial changes in his mental power. Even so, every time you advance, you must not let go of the opportunity to outline a spell with a gift from the world. In deep meditation, Gretel quickly rummaged through and selected the most suitable spell. Limited wishing. This spell is too simple in nature, and all conditions must be manually added later. It is not suitable to burn it with the gift of the world. Cloning. He wanted this spell very much, but the level was not high enough and he had not tried it himself yet. He just memorized the spell model. Teleportation. Teleportation really didn't matter. It wasn't as good as tree walking if the distance was close. He wasn't sure of it if it was far away. Theoretically, he could use this spell to jump back to Nevis directly. In fact, he didn't dare to take such a risk. Which one should he choose? Which one he can successfully engrave? Which one he can choose to gain the most? "Teacher, which magic do you think little Greet will choose?" Balba was also struggling with this question. He has done a lot since he advanced to level 14, but he doesn't seem to have created any spells. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1437. Idion hung in the air, stretched his neck and looked, except that it was not spinning around. If Ashu Isong hadn't received the news a beat later than him, and rushed up many beats later, he couldn't stay in the air for a long time, and had to ask Idion to help. I'm afraid he would really be spinning around. Elder Amat, Elder Fahim, and a group of elven legends watched with wide eyes, sensing with their mental power, but did not dare to put their mental power too close. Sighs came, one long and one short, one after another. If they weren't too proud of their status, there would be a few people who would wander around, pull their hair or pluck their beards. The new legend Balba stood straight in the air and quietly looked at the teacher from the corner of his eyes. The Lord of Thunder looked intently, seemingly all his energy was devoted to Gretel, but the permeating spiritual power enveloped the entire space around him. It's over, it seems like there's no escape. Teacher, I am a legend after all. Even if I say a sentence or two that is not quite right, don't slap me. A group of people wait from morning to night, from night to morning, and from morning to night again. The sun rises and the moon sets, the sun sets and the moon rises, light and dark alternate for several rounds, and several rounds of food and water are delivered from the royal court to quench everyone's thirst. Of course, no one is eating or drinking. Even if a high-level powerhouse doesn't eat or drink for a few meals, no one will be able to hold on. Besides, what should I do if I eat and drink here? Should we solve it in mid-air, open another dimension and jump in to solve it, or fly down in front of everyone and fly up again later? It doesn't matter if you skip a meal. If you miss the various changes in the advancement process, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Under such high expectations, the clouds surrounding Gretel finally began to become thinner. Shrinking, flowing, rotating, bit by bit, revealing Gretel's sitting figure. The moment all the clouds dissipated, he opened his eyes, shook his head vigorously, and rubbed his cheeks. Hey! Cyrilla! Idion covered his face. Ashuej covered her face. Baebo covered his face. Everyone watched helplessly as Gretel shouted loudly and then pushed hard. When he couldn't push any more, he took a few steps back and summoned 2 large force field hands. After a pause, 2 more were summoned, and 2 more. Is there no one else in his eyes? No matter how many others there are, they have to take good care of Cyrilla. 2, 2, and 2, 6 large force field hands worked together to finally push Cyrilla awake. Silver Dragon shook his head, opened his eyes, raised his head, and sneezed loudly. Ah, sneeze. Gretel, are you done? With a flash of light, Gretel quickly opened any door, dodged a distance, and narrowly avoided the dragon's tail swinging back. Fortunately, if he hadn't seen Sarah sleeping and had been prepared, he would have been whipped from the top of the tree this time. Gretel, you got it, what's the new magic? Sarah finally woke up a little, turned back into human form, grabbed Gretel, and asked repeatedly. At this time, the nearby elf legends began to retreat one by one, flying down with their disciples. Only the master and disciple of the Lord of Thunder approached. Gretel smiled at Cyrilla, then at the teacher and senior brother. Raise your hand and press forward. No movement. No response. Light, sound, magic waves, nothing. The spiritual power of the 2 legendary mages enveloped the surroundings, but even they could not feel the slightest fluctuation. Gretel, you won't fail, right? No way, it's just that the conditions for this spell are too harsh, and I can't use it now. As he spoke, Greet raised his hand again. This time it was not the spell he burned, but the low-level Silent Phantom. Gretel has used this spell very well, and the content it can present is extremely complex. Light and shadow bloomed, layer upon layer, and what finally appeared was a 3-dimensional structure, a magic circle that was so complex that it made people dizzy. There is the collection of energy, the conversion of energy, the locking of targets, and the stacking of spells one after another. Cyrilla circled the magic circle a few times, with a confused look on her face, and looked up at the Lord of Thunder. What is this? I can't understand. Please explain. Just because he can't understand it doesn't mean others can't understand it. The Lord of Thunder's face has darkened. He was very familiar with this magic circle. It was the set of things that everyone developed to treat the eldest prince. He, Elder Ahmad, Elder Fahim, and a group of elven legends worked together to modify it dozens of times before it got to a decent level. It can ensure safety, ensure that the spell path is smooth and can operate freely. This thing, the little guy chose it? How audacious! This spell can only be activated with the help of the Well of Eternity, or at least the power of the Mage Tower. Did he burn this spell to drain himself dry at once? How did you burn this? Can you use it? Of course not, Gretel raised his head and answered confidently. Without waiting for the Lord of Thunder to scold him, he continued. I don't have the energy. I can't lock onto the target. I definitely can't use it. This magic can only be activated by connecting a powerful energy source to one end and locking a point with a microscope on the other. Let's take a look now. Then you still choose this. This time, it was senior brother Baebo who got in front of the teacher and asked questions. Probably because he was worried that the teacher would be angry, and because he was also worried that his younger brother didn't know what was important and didn't have a powerful spell to suppress the situation, his tone was urgent and fast. You have advanced to level 15 and your mental power has become substantial. This spell is your first powerful spell. You don't have a spell to suppress the situation, how can you go out and make a living? I think back then, when he entered level 15, what he solidified was the 7-ring magic of the plasticity system, the king of elements. This spell allows him to channel amazing elemental energy, control the four powers of acid, ice, fire, and lightning, and launch amazing attacks. Relying on this spell, he could set out from the Orc Kingdom, go west along the northern coastline of the Black Continent, go to the western end of the Old Continent, and then sail back. Among them, there are all kinds of battles, all kinds of weird attacks and curses, orcs, missionaries of the Radiant God religion, natives of the Black Continent, and many magical beasts, all of which he relies on powerful attack power to sweep through. But this little guy, little Gretel, made a half-assed thing. It can't be used to hit people, and it can't be used to escape. What's the use of it? I don't want to fight with it. Gretel muttered quietly. He turned his head, looked at Sarala, and moved his eyes in a circle. I'm a doctor. These days, who dares to say that he will never get sick or injured, and that his relatives and friends will not get sick or injured? Who dares to offend a healer for nothing? I also have Sarala, and Idion. In short, if it comes to the point where the healer takes action in person to fight, then he or she has improper planning and the wrong route. As the leader of the team, what he needs to do is not fight, but use his brain. Besides, my next stop is Dragon Island, those giant dragons, who needs me to fight them? Who can I beat? It's better to stay down and find a place that is convenient for me to do research. Baebo sighed slightly and stopped talking. The Lord of Thunder frowned slightly. Do research? What do you want to study? Chromosomes. Influence them one by one, make them extraordinary one by one, or cut them out one by one, and then see what their use is. Greet started to beam as he spoke. In the past, to do this research, you needed to open a large magic circle, or you needed a limited wishing spell. Now it's better, as long as there is a magic source, you can use it, and there is no need to burn diamonds. So you don't have to burn diamonds. I am a disciple of the majestic Lord of Thunder, but I don't have enough diamonds to use. Well, there is still something missing, especially the little guy who is quite scientific. A level 15 plastic magician cannot yet rub diamonds by hand. The Lord of Thunder endured, and finally swallowed his complaints. The little guy is level 15, and is a high-level mage by any standard. He has to walk the rest of his journey on his own. Even as a teacher, all I can do is ask. Then what's your next plan? Before Greet could speak, he glanced at Sarala subconsciously. Sarala's face lit up, and she couldn't wait to raise her arms and shouted. Dragon Island! Dragon Island! I promised Sarara that I would accompany her to Dragon Island to meet her parents and family, Greet replied thoughtfully. Before he finished speaking, a soft exclamation sounded from beside him. Dragon Island? Greet, are you leaving now? Well. Greet turned around. At some point, Idion, Ash Moonsong, Bernard, Appa, and a group of familiar elves all came closer and listened to him silently. The mother of his body, Iluni Imagiel, was also standing in the crowd, covering her mouth with her hands, tears shining. You are leaving so soon, you have only been on Yangju Island for a few years, Mom has not even seen you properly or spoken to you properly, nor has she made you some clothes. Gretel felt guilty for a moment. Although he stayed on Yangju Island for a long time, most of the time he was obsessed with learning and research. There are 24 hours a day, and I wish I could read a book even during my mealtime. As for my sleeping time, I spend a lot of time in the Emerald Dream. Get along with your mother? Talk to your mother more? Walk around with her, listen to her tell stories about the past, tell her about your own experiences, tell her jokes, and make her happy? It doesn't exist. Except for the time when he first came, and after fulfilling his obligations as the son of man, he basically did nothing. After all, she is the mother of this body, not his own mother. The relationship during the time when he first came here has already exhausted his lifetime acting skills. Mother, I won't leave right away. Gretel bravely went over to hug her. I have just reached level 15. I still need to consolidate and adjust my dragon-shaped transformation. There is still a lot to do. Don't worry, I will stay with you during this time. Thank you for the 2000 starting coins rewarded by travelers who fight for their dreams. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1438. If you want to leave, you can leave immediately. If you don't want to leave, there will be endless reasons why you can't go. This thing needs to be done, that thing needs to be done, this person needs to be seen, that place needs to be visited. Gretel soon found himself falling into this trap. Learn 8-level spells. Even if you just copy down important spells, you won't be able to copy them all in one day. After practicing the transformation technique and transforming into an adult silver dragon, he could only hold it for 1 minute at first, but now he can hold it for more than 5 minutes. Sirara's hope is that he can hold it for at least an hour. Walk around with my mother, talk to her, listen to her stories, stand up straight and let her tailor her clothes, eat the meals she cooks. There is no end to this. Looking at Eluni's sad eyes, if Gretel doesn't ask to leave, she hopes to keep her son until the end of the world. Gretel was delayed on Evermeet Island for 5 days, and then for another 5 days, and finally found that he could no longer go on like this. He quickly put together a plan, cutting off all the non-urgent matters like melons and vegetables. Let's not learn magic or anything like that yet. Spell materials and spell books, if you can borrow them, if you can copy them, if you can't borrow or copy them, just don't want them. The Dragon Clan also has many powerful spellcasters. Practicing transfiguration can be done on the road, so there is no need to rush. The duration of his support is related to his own strength, and the growth of strength does not happen overnight. As for accompanying my mother, don't worry about me. Before Greet could hesitate and organize his words, Eluni had already smiled like a moonlight. Little Greet, Mom is an elf, and she still has a lot of time. Don't worry about me, just move forward as much as possible. When you become a legend, you will come to see Mom, right? Mother. Gretel lowered his head slightly. Parental love is so profound that they always think too much about their children and too little about themselves. For the sake of their children's future, they are willing to humiliate themselves and sacrifice themselves. As long as they see their children achieve a little bit, they can get the greatest joy. His mother in his previous life was like this, Eluni was like this, and many, many parents he saw, were like this. Go, go. Eluni's smile was peaceful and warm. The sun shone on her through the leaves, adding a golden edge to her light brown dress. She lowered her head slightly, her fingers flying, and the thin and dense silk threads kept flying up, weaving themselves into pieces. Before Gretel leaves, she has to complete this soft and fine elf cloak, which has many functions such as warmth, waterproofing, and invisibility. It is not an additional enchantment after the weaving is completed, but a variety of complex weaving methods to guide the flow of magic through silk threads with magical power during weaving. It takes a lot of time and energy. But after it is made, it lasts much longer than ordinary enchanted cloaks. Such a cloak, as long as it is not damaged, can protect the wanderer who has left for 1,000 years. Go. A child like you is destined not to stay at home forever. Mom has also traveled far away, so she knows. There was a faint smile on her lips. She paused lightly after speaking, raised her head, her eyes were unfocused, and she looked into the distance. At that time, she was still young and had just grown up. She was determined to travel to the mainland and see everywhere. She did not want to end her life after just one glance at Yangju Island. And what kind of mood did her mother's mother, feel watching her sail away to the sea? Don't worry, go far, and travel the world with the people you like. When you are tired and miss your mother, come back at any time, your mother is always here waiting for you. Then, mother, you have to be good and happy. Gretel wanted to say find someone you like, but swallowed the words again. These words seemed inappropriate for him, and he always felt that he was not worthy of his original father. Although he and that man have never met. Don't worry, this is Yeongju Island, my mother's hometown. In my own home, with all my relatives and friends around me, how could my mother be bad? Ilun stopped what she was doing, looked at Gretel carefully, then raised the half-knitted cloak and gestured towards him. Don't worry about Mom. If you are fine, Mom will be fine. Greet stayed with her mother for 3 whole days. I watched an elf cloak go from being only half to 2/3 complete, to 3/4 complete, to only the collar and streamers remaining. He was finally pushed out by his mother with a smile. Go ahead. You have a lot to do and a lot of people to visit, don't you? The first person Gretel visited was naturally the Lord of Thunder. In front of the teacher, he struggled for a full minute before holding out a small box under the Lord of Thunder's impatient glare. Well, teacher, we may not have time to attend your wedding. This is a gift. It's really your fault to spend your energy on these things, the Lord of Thunder complained lightly without even looking at the small box. On the other hand, Princess Norrell next to her smiled and said, Don't be like this. Isn't it great that your students have this idea? Well, Greet, you came to see your teacher. What's the matter? Thank you, madam. Praise the mistress. With the teacher's wife helping to speak, the power of the teacher's reprimands can be cut in half. Gretel secretly expressed his gratitude in his heart and immediately got to the point. Teacher, I will leave for Dragon Island soon. Before that, I have a batch of rewards to receive on Yeongju Island, which is probably equivalent to 5 legendary resources. Let me ask the teacher what these resources should be focused on, and what Thunderhorn needs. You take care of yourself first, the Lord of Thunder interrupted for the second time without thinking. You little guy who hasn't reached the stage of legend yet, whether it's the Thunderhorn or the Council, it's not the time to need your help. No matter how much resources you have, they are all your own. Just plan for yourself. Yes, Gretel bowed his head and accepted the instruction honestly. After a pause, he said carefully. The Queen and I talked about it when we first came to Yeongju Island. These resources are approximately equivalent to 15 to 25 legendary level equipment scrolls, or 4 or 5 legendary level contract partners. Such as elemental elves, animal companions, legendary ancient trees and so on. As long as both parties are willing, Yeongju Island will help me manage the contract. Teacher, look, what should I choose? The Lord of Thunder stared at him, secretly heaving a sigh of relief, and then another. Thinking back then, he had been studying on Yeongju Island for all these years, but he had only made equal gains and losses. The spells he researched on Yeongju Island helped the elves, which just paid for his study and research expenses. I had a few coins in my pocket when I went to the island, and I still had the same coins when I left the island. But, this little guy Gretel, 5 legendary resources. 5 servings. Of course, 3 of them were Gretel's reward for helping save the elf secret realm. To be fair, this remuneration is not too high, or even a little low. The 4th portion was Gretel's reward for helping to treat the eldest prince, which was paid personally by the Queen. Although many legends have been used, Gretel's role as the leader is irreplaceable. The 5th share is Gretel's reward for developing blood replenishing magic, chromosome healing magic, and methods to quickly increase the strength of elves. There should have been more, but when Greed was doing research, he was also lavish on resources, and once made a feat of burning all the diamonds on the island. So, after 7 deductions and 8 deductions, these are the only ones left. Tell me what your plans are first. The Lord of Thunder suppressed his sighs and replied calmly. Gretel didn't even think about it and reported honestly. One part is for Cyrilla, and it must be exchanged for gold coins, gold and silver coins, gold and silver coins and jewelry as much as possible. The other part is sent back to Nevis for my disciples and followers. This, I choose some specialties from Yangju Island. The Lord of Thunder was non-committal. A resource that can directly lead to the legend, as long as it is not spent too loosely, it is enough to pile up 7 or 8 high-level mages. If the people holding this resource are cautious enough, have enough business skills, and know how to buy low, sell high, and make things rare, it will not be difficult to create 3 or 5 half-step legends with this resource. With this resource as a foundation, the Little Guys sect will have a solid force. All that is missing is time. So, what about the other 3? I have no idea. If you don't know, just go check it out. Just check it out. What legendary equipment and legendary spell scrolls can be taken out from the Elves' warehouses? Go scan them first and you'll have an idea. There are also those legendary level contract partners. What are there to choose from? What are the abilities, aptitudes, and development prospects of each one? You have no idea at all, so you come to ask me. Gretel scurried away with his head in his arms. With so much equipment and so many scrolls, when does he have to see it? The main reason is that if he doesn't want to choose, he won't be too embarrassed to look at other people's family background. Although the elves were very tolerant of him, and they let him see him when he walked in without hesitation, but the more this happened, the more he had to restrain himself. He fled the Thunder Lord's residence in one breath, and did not dare to ask his senior brother for advice. He only returned to where he lived and walked around. After turning around 7 or 8 times, his eyes lit up, and he rushed out and grabbed Udian. Udian, come with me to the treasure house and pick out 2 things. 2, 3, or 4, whatever you choose. When you go to Dragon Island, your equipment and weapons must be prepared no matter what. And Sister Uge. Sister Uge. Bernard. Appa. Come with me. Get the equipment together first. This trip to Long Island is very far and takes a long time. It must be complete. That's right, Cyrilla. Come together. That share of gold, silver, and jewelry is another matter. Equipment and other things, if others have them, Cyrilla must also have them. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1439. Watcher Light Armor. Made from the bark and branches of the World Tree, soaked in the water of the Well of Eternity, it can provide excellent defense and natural resonance. Wait a minute, Gretel rushed forward without saying a word, raised his hand and released the cloud chamber, covering the light armor. With a smooth touch, he took out the Geiger counter and waved it on the light armor. Let me see. For those who have soaked in the well water of the Well of Eternity, I don't know which version of the well water it is. He needs to see if there is any radiation. The blade of silver glory. Made of mithril mixed with fragments of extraterrestrial gold and adamantine lords. The left blade is inlaid with the heart of the tree, and the right blade is inlaid with the core of the earth element. This doesn't suit my fighting style. Udian picked it up, waited, waved it again, shook his head and put it down. Gretel cast expectant eyes on Sister Uge. Uge picked it up, waited, and then put it down. It's too heavy for me to use. Invisibility cloak. Weaved with the long hair of the invisible beast mixed with the spider silk of the flying cloud spider lord, and giving Lady Silver Moon's blessing. In this case, before Gretel could even read the label, he was grabbed by Isong and compared with him. Gretel took a step back and waved his hands vigorously. I don't need this. I really don't need it. I'm safe. No need. Let's choose this one. Of the group of people, You are the least likely to be beaten. Ashuedge couldn't help but wrap the invisibility cloak around him. Moonlight fabric flowed down from his head, and in just a moment, there was one less person in the warehouse. Sarala opened her eyes wide, took a closer look, sniffed hard, and reached out to touch. Where are the people? Invisibility, sound insulation, blocking dark vision, blocking magic fluctuations, blocking smell. Ashu-san clapped her fingers in the same way, testing the effect of this cloak in different ways. Can you hear us when we talk? Shout twice. Jump. Jump again. Try casting a spell, I got you. Except for Greet, who felt that this round of testing was completely unnecessary, everyone else was extremely satisfied. Sarara moved quickly and touched the cloak according to the elder's instructions, causing it to shrink on its own into a narrow silver-gray belt. Hanging around Greet's neck, it looks more like a tie than a scarf. This can be made wider and used directly as a scarf. Or, it can be tied higher and used to tie up hair. The elder smiled and pointed to Sarala, watching her change the cloak into several patterns, and then pulled it up. Gretel went to see the next item. Ancient Beast's Soul, Bernard. Bernard. Come and see if this is suitable for you. If so, can I help you find a big bone that you can use? Let me give it a try. Bernard walked over awkwardly, followed the instructions of the elder Guanku, and held the magic crystal that sealed the beast's soul. In an instant, a roar that shook the earth and the mountains resounded in his soul, causing the barbarian to take 2 steps back, and the bones in his body rattled. Is that okay? Greet looked at him worriedly. Don't force it. If it doesn't work, we'll find another way, or just seal the beast's soul layer by layer. Be careful and don't hold on. As he spoke, he watched Bernard's face turn red, then pale again, back and forth several times. Greet quietly made a hand gesture, preparing to release a healing spell to support him, but he heard Bernard roar suddenly, stamp his feet, and his beard bulged, and his whole body looked bigger. Is this going crazy? Greet murmured. The whole person leaned back, but was pulled back by Idion, protecting him behind him. Bernard seemed to have seen him, but also seemed not to have seen him. He stretched out his hands straight and held the magic crystal tightly. The veins on his arms popped out one by one, and his eyes were about to burst. He is fighting the beast's soul. It will take a while, Idion explained in a low voice. Greet nodded lightly, followed his pull, and walked to the side lightly. As he walked, he turned back frequently. Is he okay? Okay, no one else can help. Don't worry, this piece of beast crystal is kept in the warehouse to hone your mental strength. Nothing will happen. The elder responsible for guarding the warehouse led them inside with a kind smile. Are you going to Dragon Island? Go this way. There are a few good things related to the Dragon clan in the library. It's worth taking a look at. Snored. There was a low hum and a low explosion. The elder paused slightly, turned around and smiled. Ah, Miss Sarara. The related to the dragon mentioned here means that it can resist the dragon's power and breath, allowing the little ones to last longer in front of the dragon. As for equipment made of materials such as dragon scales, there are some, but they are all gifts from dragon friends. Miss, you can take a look. There must be no resentment from the dragon clan on it. Humph. The silver dragon girl turned her head proudly. Gretel shook his head and smiled, then came over to hold her hand and lead her forward. Come on, let's go take a look and pick out some equipment for you. Do you want a weapon, or an armored cloak? Or something else? Jewelry. Okay, let's take a look at the accessories. Well, there is always one piece of jewelry missing from the silver dragon girl's jewelry box. Whether it's magic equipment or something else, in short, having jewelry is good, having beautiful jewelry is better, and as for the effect, that doesn't matter. Greet and the group of people around him spent 1, 2, and 3 days in the warehouse of the Magic Academy, in the royal court secret vault, and in the queen's private vault. Idion's belt is inlaid with 3 dove egg-sized moonstones, each of which comes with a cure fatal wounds shot. After using it, you only need to bask in the moon 30 times to replenish it. Ash Moonsong has a set of magical light armor that can follow her transformation. Whether she transforms into a leopard, a golden cat or a kestrel, it can firmly protect her body. Cyrilla is a magic necklace with the addition of light spirit technique, feather fall technique and flash technique. For Cyrilla, it is the main beauty. Bernard took away the beast's soul. As for the big stick, Gretel planned to help him search for it after arriving at Dragon Island to see if he could find a dragon bone that he could get his hands on. Appa added a staff to help him channel the Moonfall spell, the same spell he unleashed on the Great Rift battlefield. The staff is made of the twigs of the World Tree and is inlaid with a pearl produced by a high-level goddess clam. In addition, everyone also added a lot of bits and pieces, including a handful of self-defense spell scrolls. All in all, in addition to the share of gold, silver, and jewelry from Sarara and the share of resources sent to Nevis, everyone tacitly set aside a share for Gretel to add things to themselves. Then, Sarara looked at Greet with a frown on his face, his head in his hands, and spinning around on the spot. Turn in a circle, turn in another circle, turn in another circle. What's the matter, Greet? Sarara leaned over curiously. Look up, look down. You've made circles on the floor of the study. It's not Ashu yet. Greet continued to scratch his head with a grimace. On the desk, there are 5 or 6 pieces of draft paper scattered here and there, and each piece of draft paper is scribbled horizontally and vertically. Sarara flipped through it quickly. The names, categories, skills, were written densely, like some kind of job search report. Look carefully, there are earth element lords, lightning elves, giant eagles, feathered serpents. The last piece of paper is particularly dense with information, including the names and addresses of more than a dozen ancient trees. Gretel, do you want to contract an ancient tree? Cyrilla waved the manuscript and asked happily. What a great old tree! How convenient ancient trees are! She flew from the Kingdom of the Sun to Yangju Island on an ancient tree ship. How comfortable that journey was! Safiria has a special regard for Gretel, and loves her very much. She lives in a cabin, where she always has fresh air, bright but not dazzling sunlight, and sweet fruits whenever she reaches out her hand. Ah, Greet murmured in reply, then began to rub his forehead and temples again, and put his head in his hands. With the ancient tree ship here, we can go to Dragon Island together. We don't have to worry about storms or getting lost, and we can arrive safely. But, that guy Ashu. He paused and walked around the open space next to the desk. After a pause, he finally couldn't bear it anymore. He took out a pencil-shaped oak stick from his breast pocket and shook it twice with all his strength. Ashu, don't go too far. I'm telling you, don't go too far. Can you turn into a ship to carry us? When we encounter a superstorm or a legendary sea monster, can you protect us from danger? Can you just fly? If you can, change it for me. Now. Right now. I will take you to the beach now. You can turn into a ship and fly 200 miles in a big storm. I will not contract with other trees. On the top of the oak stick, all the leaves the size of rice grains drooped down. It drooped for a while, then quickly straightened up and continued dancing. Gretel grabbed it and continued to shake it hard. No? If not, can you control the ancient vine bird and take us to fly 10,000 miles continuously? Can you identify the direction on the sea and under the stars? If that doesn't work, can you convince Cyrilla to turn into a dragon and fly so many of us back to Dragon Island? That's definitely not going to work. Before the oak staff could move its leaves again, Cyrilla quickly interjected. At most, I can only take you, Gretel. There are so many people. It's absolutely impossible for me to carry you all. Look. Gretel spread his hands helplessly. Look, Ashu, it's not that I don't want to use you, it's that you can't do the job. Be good and obedient. I'll find an old tree with a better temper. You can also ask it for more advice and learn more. Then you find a beautiful tree. It needs to be beautiful. The oak staff had just been wilted by a violent storm. Now the owner patiently comforted it, and it perked up again and began to make conditions. You have a girlfriend, APA also has a girlfriend, even Idian has a girlfriend, I want a girlfriend too. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1440. Eugenie is one of the first saplings that grew out after World Tree was transplanted to Yangju Island. She has been assisting World Tree in sorting out the mystery on the island. With a faint smile, Elder Melancilla led Greet to visit the ancient trees one by one, introducing them one by one. In terms of wisdom and ability, she is second to none among the ancient trees on the island. Gretel smiled at her. Then, he raised his hand and pressed the oak staff on his chest, lifted out a small section of it, and brought it face to face with Eugenie. Ashu, what do you think? I don't like her, she looks very difficult to mess with. The oak stick was dejected, its leaves drooping one by one. Greet smiled apologetically at Elder Melancilla. Since it is an ancient tree that possesses the secret of the mystery lock, I am afraid that I am not suitable to take her away. Elder Zinkson, please introduce me to other ancient trees. Elder Melancilla nodded without surprise. When introducing ancient trees, of course we must start with the oldest and most outstanding ones. This is the generosity and sincerity of the elves. However, when Greet heard the word mysterious lock, he shrank away. This was also his sense of propriety. The mystery lock of the elf tribe is one of the most fundamental mysteries of the elf tribe. It seems that Gretel doesn't want to touch it and is absolutely unwilling to let it out from him. Then let's look at something else. Alan Bulot, this is a strong iron tree, and it is also the tallest and strongest iron tree in the entire Holden Valley. The entire Magic Academy is under his watch. Under. Ashu, what do you think? Gretel once again used his mind to communicate with the oak staff. This time, the oak cane not only drooped its leaves, but also almost bent its trunk. I can't beat him. Don't be ridiculous. Why would a good person hit you? Greet scolded, and then asked curiously. Then has it ever gone to sea? Or, has it become a ship or a flying ship, capable of long-distance navigation in the sea and in the sky? This, I'm afraid there is no such thing. Elder Melancilla laughed out loud. Alambulu has been standing on this hillside since he took root. He has never even wandered outside the valley if he doesn't want to go out for fun. Moreover, you expect an ironwood tree to turn into a boat. Such heavy wood, unless it can be perfectly transformed into a cabin from the beginning, will immediately sink to the bottom with a bang. Gretel looked at the elder apologetically. Elder Melancilla smiled for a while, patted him, and continued walking forward. Come, look here. Aunt Floret is the guardian tree of the Magic Academy and an ancient tree that specializes in caring for cubs. She loves children the most. Every one of our cubs has played under her canopy and eaten them live through her fruit. Ah, Aunt Floret, Greet saluted quickly. The ancient tree trembled, stretched out a branch and handed it to him. The branches were full of fruits and the fragrance was fragrant. Gretel picked one as a thank you and bit into it. As expected, her mouth was full of sweetness. Let's forget about this one. This time, without protesting with the oak staff, Greet quickly declined with a smile. How can I take away the children's guardians and childhood memories? I'd rather trouble you to introduce other elders. Which ancient tree is still and thoughtful and willing to walk around? I will talk to him again. After Greet visited a few ancient trees, he refused Elder Melancilla's guidance and visited each tree one by one according to the list she gave. However, most ancient trees prefer silence to movement. Just ask for some bark, leaves, branches, and fruits. It's simple. If you want to exchange knowledge, you can. Wanted to make a contract with Gretel, uproot it, and turn it into a ship across the ocean? No, never, absolutely impossible. Greet visited ancient trees one after another from north to south, from dense forests to mountain tops, and encountered walls again and again. After searching almost all over the island, I found a bright red maple tree in the crevices of the cliffs of the South Island. Hearing Greet say that he wanted to go out for a walk, the maple tree named Servilia shook its leaves vigorously and was extremely excited. The bark of the tree is slightly cracked, and the sea breeze blows through, sending a sweet fragrance. Really? Is it okay? Can I really go out for a walk? I have been here for thousands of years, and I can finally leave. I always dream about places far, far away. Dreaming about the big trees in the big forest, dreaming about the sea, dreaming about the heavy snow that sinks to your legs in winter. Can we go together? To turn into a ship? I do. Wait, you are a tree, why are you dreaming? No, you are just a tree, why do you dream of a place far, far away? Gretel's head is full of black lines. He continued to inquire further, and the maple tree shook its branches and showed him a piece of its own seeds. You see, our seeds fly like this. I was also like this at the beginning, flying, 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 flying. Greet held the green fruit. Outside the small fruit, there was a pair of extremely delicate thin flying wings, ready to fly in the wind in his palm. It is conceivable that when the fruit ripens and explodes, those fruits with flying wings can fly to very far away places by riding on the air current. Of course, flying across the ocean is a no-brainer, but after being pecked and carried by birds, and transplanted by elves, it can indeed span long distances. As for how a tree inherits the memory of its ancestors from its seeds, that is another story. Ashu, what do you think? Gretel asked the oak staff the same question. This time, the oak staff was silent for a long time, then suddenly jumped out of his chest pocket and fell to the ground. When it jumped out of the pocket, it was still the length of a pencil. When it landed on the ground, it was already as long as an eyebrow stick. As soon as it fell, the roots went straight into the ground, and the thick green leaves spread out in the wind, shaking loudly. Hello. I'm Ashu. Nice to meet you. I mean, can I get to know you? Can I travel with you? Can I ask you questions? As he spoke, he tried his best to stretch the branches. The 15 branches at the top of the main trunk, as if blown by the sea breeze for several years, are neatly bent towards the maple tree. I snapped. The branches covered with bright red leaves are drawn straight down. There was a crisp sound, and one of the fragile twigs of the oak tree was cut off, and the fruit was also shaking on the branch. The oak staff was frightened by this, and all its thick branches were withdrawn, and even the crown of the tree shrunk by half. After shaking for a few times, he tentatively pushed forward a little further. Beautiful. Snapped. Woo. The oak staff shrunk down, 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 into a small stick, and the roots of the tree were all pulled out of the soil. Greet shook his head, stepped forward to pick it up and put it back in his pocket. Sorry, Ashu was too excited. He said that he had never seen such a beautiful girl. Maple Servilia had been silently observing Gretel, observing that Gretel was holding down the oak staff with her mental power and wrapping it tightly. She and Gretel communicated through spiritual power, and she could smell the contract between the oak staff and Gretel. In such a package, the information about the oak staff did not come through at all. So, Greet, the master, can control that little sapling? The question is he willing to take care of it? The ancient trees standing proudly on the top of the mountain were silently meditating. After a while, she shook the branches and leaves, but there was no sweetness in the sea breeze. Do I need to promise him, do I need to promise him before I can go to sea with you? Why do you think so? Gretel pressed the oak stick into his pocket, even the top. He took a step forward and touched Servilia's branches with a warm smile. You are you, and he is him. You are the legendary ancient tree. No one in this world can force a legend. Whether it is me or everyone around me, I have only respect for you. He went back and forth, pouring out all the words in his stomach, and Servilia lowered her branches. On the top of the mountain, the bright red leaves swayed in the sea breeze, and the sweet fragrance overflowed one by one. You want me to turn into a ship? Turn into an airship? Fly with you? Yes. Only legends can protect us all in storms and waves. In order to deal with complex situations, it is best to turn into a ship during normal times and have the ability to fly in times of danger. It's not difficult to fly. The pentagonal red leaves continued to sway, and it was obvious that Servilia was not in a calm mood. Half excited, half nervous. It's not difficult to turn into a big ship and carry people and things. However, I don't know how to turn it into a big ship so that it can float well on the sea, how to fly under any circumstances, and how to know the way. When it comes to this, I am 70–80% willing. Gretel smiled. It's easy. How to turn into a ship, how to turn into a flying ship, I'll take you to Sister Cecilia, she will definitely be willing to teach you. As for how to know the way I'll lead the way. I'll lead the way. A petite tern flew down from mid-air. The whole body is snow white, the top of the head and the back of the neck are pure black, and the beak and paws are as bright as coral. It is the one that participated in Gretel's experiment and tried to give him a gift. At this moment, it spread its wings, circled 3 times on the top of the maple tree, then jumped to the highest branch, jumping back and forth. Isn't it just to go to Dragon Island? I know it best. From Yangju Island to the north to the northernmost part of Dragon Island, my kindred and I will go back and forth every year. Master Mage, please let me lead the way. Look, it's solved. Greed spread his hands. At least we have a guide. Sister Servilia, if you are interested in joining, I will accompany you to find Sister Cecilia first and let you chat with her. Early the next morning, the experienced old ship tree hung a fruit on a twig, and slowly and solemnly moved it in front of the bright red maple tree. Come on, you need to understand these first and know how to transform. Later, I will take you to float on the sea and fly in the air. If there are no problems, you can go with little Gretel. Thanks to @Zinglianzai for the 100 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1441. Stretch it. Stretch it. Lengthen it a little longer. Narrow it at both ends, yes, tilt it up. Only a streamlined ship shape can ride the wind and waves in the sea. The bottom is sharper. A boat with a pointed bottom can better resist wind and waves and is less likely to capsize. The cabins are all sealed. You are a tree, not one of those stupid wooden boats. Do you want to fill the cabin with water? There is no need to put the mast up in a hurry. If there is wind, put it up. When there is no wind, put it away. It will save more effort to float along the water. Cecilia, the ancient ship tree, gave her guidance with all her heart. From the ship type, to the detailed structure of the ship, to how not to get rid of the things stored in the space when changing the cabin structure, to how to make the passengers live comfortably in the wind and waves. When you leave, you can collect some flowers and plants to take with you. One will relieve boredom, and the other will help you bear fruit for them to eat. Your syrup is too sweet, and little Gretel doesn't like eating too sweet. Take a trip to the sea, 200 miles to the northwest, and 200 miles back. Take off again, fly 200 miles due north, and fly another 200 miles. On both occasions, Cecilia was by her side, first giving constant instructions, then giving a little pointers, and then remaining silent, only mentioning one or two words when the other party asked for advice. After 2 trips, Cecilia stood on the most fertile piece of land by the lake of the Magic Academy. The leaves of the trees all drooped down, unable to move no matter how much the wind blew. Elder Melancilla went to comfort her twice before she replied wiltedly. Do you have to ask Servilia to send them there? I'm not worried, can I send them there myself? Elder Melancilla. It is not easy for the elves to cultivate an ancient ship tree. It is really not easy. Especially for someone like Cecilia, who can sail, fly, know the way, cross oceans, and carry hundreds or even thousands of people at once. That's too difficult. Now you are worried about Greet and want to send them to Dragon Island in person. After arriving at Dragon Island, will you be worried again and want to send them to another place in person? Let's leave this task to other ancient trees, so you don't have to go into battle yourself. Fortunately, Greet knew the seriousness and refused desperately. Cecilia could only carry the maple tree and slide around the sea a few more times before she could barely teach her how to behave. Oh, if you encounter strong winds and waves and you really can't hold on anymore, just dive into the water. Finally, Cecilia carried the maple tree and kept reminding. Drill a little deeper, not too deep, and everything will be calm. You are a legendary ancient tree, so you won't be able to withstand even this little water pressure. It doesn't matter if you really can't. Let little Gretel give you blessings. I have no problem. I can definitely do it. I believe you can do it, but don't just focus on diving, remember to ventilate and don't suffocate your passengers to death. Cecilia was full of worries and gave numerous instructions, wishing she could wrap a branch around her and teach her in time. After half a month of teaching, the day of departure finally arrived. On the pier at the edge of Yangju Island, 2 ships, one large and one small, were parked. The big ship is Cecilia. At this moment, there are dozens of elves standing above, and some are filing up, carrying various things. On the pier, a mother and her son were saying goodbye. Anio, you have just recovered a little. Don't be too tired after going to the secret realm. The queen pulled her son with a face full of reluctance, straightened his collar, and tugged on the straps of his cloak. You are very mentally strong, so it is easy to ignore physical discomfort. But you have to remember that this body has been cured at a great cost. You must not be hungry or tired and hurt your body again. Mother, I know after a period of adjustment, Anio's height has grown taller and has surpassed the queen's shoulders. He smiled and held his mother's hand, leaned forward again, and gave the queen a hug. The restoration of the secret realm and the construction of the Well of Eternity are all responsible for the elders, and I will be the central coordinator. I will come back immediately after the work is done, and I will never let you worry. On the other side of the pier, senior brother Gretel and senior brother Birbo were lined up in a row, listening to the teacher's instructions. The Lord of Thunder clasped his hands behind his back and first told his eldest disciple. You have already built a Well of Eternity. It is not difficult for you to build another one. Once you are done, come back quickly. The secrets here in the Great Rift will be more helpful to your advancement. Birbo nodded hard. The Lord of Thunder turned his head again and looked at Gretel steadily, and for a moment he didn't know where to start with his instructions. After pausing for a while, he patted his shoulder. Be careful. There is a big secret on Dragon Island. I didn't get there back then. I hope you can see it this time. Of course, you don't have to focus on that. It's best to go your own way. Gretel nodded. After a long time, when the Lord of Thunder finished his instructions, he turned back to shake hands with his senior brother, and then shook hands with Archmage Heinz. "Senior brother, I leave it to you and the Archmage to send the resources back to Nevis." "Don't worry, leave it to me." Archmage Heinz tried his best to smile. The necromancer's stiff face was already very light and even a little bright. "This time I ran to the Elf Island. Although I didn't clone the body of the Elf Prince, nor did I clone the body of any powerful elf, he was here after all. 500 years ago, 1000 years ago, he was the only necromancer who set foot on Elf Island. For this matter, he could go back and blow it for 10 days and 10 nights, all over the Black Crow Swamp. What's more, he personally took the Plague Lord and performed the cloning technique. Personally. In the future, when the Plague Lord advances to legend, he can brag like this: in Black Crow Swamp, he taught the Plague Lord the necromancy spells. He taught it. Now the new airship has arrived. Thinking of this, Archmage Heinz's tone became a little lighter. "Send this batch of things to the Mage Tower, and I will personally transport them to the Eagle Country, and then arrange for them to be sent back. Make sure they are in good condition, and there will be no problems at all." "Thank you for your hard work." Greet saluted him respectfully. He stood on the pier, watching his senior brother and Archmage Heinz board the light green ship, waving goodbye to them, and then walked to the pier on the other side. There, Cyrilla, Bernard, Appa and Shiloh, as well as Idian and Ashmoonsong, were all ready to go. A dark brown boat floated on the edge of the pier, stretching out its branches to cling to the rocks on the edge of the pier. In the center of the deck, on the high erected mast, the fierce red sail shone to the eyes. Greet glanced at his friends one by one, then turned to look at the dock. The small pier was densely packed with friends seeing them off. The elves headed by Kusa Oak and studying with him in the Magic Academy. The elves who were healed by him during the battle in the Great Rift. When he was studying how to use well water to advance quickly, the elves he invited as experimental subjects. Everyone smiled, waved to him, and said blessings. Gretel quickened his pace and passed in front of them, nodding and shaking hands with them one by one. His pace became slower and slower. At the end of the farewell procession, Iluni Imagil, the original mother, stood in the sea breeze and tried her best to smile at him, her eyes already red. "Mom, I will travel for a while and I will come back." Gretel stepped forward, opened his arms and hugged her tightly. "Don't worry, with Idian and Servilia here, I will be safe wherever I go on the sea or in the air. Dragon Island is Cyrilla's hometown, and no one will hurt me there. Don't worry, Mom. Mom always takes care of you." Iluni gently broke away from Gretel's arms, took 2 steps back to look at him carefully, and then carefully arranged his clothes again. Greet quickly touched the cuffs, took out a small box from the space bracelet, held it in both hands, and brought it to Iluni. "Mom, this is the communication tool I made. It is the latest design of the Parliament. It can send out signals as long as you press the switch. I have a pair here that can receive signals of the same frequency. When the time comes, you can use it to directly hear my voice. It may not be received at any time. On windy and rainy days, thunderstorm days, or when I am blocked in the mountains, I may not be able to hear or receive it clearly. But most of the time, there should be no problem." While talking, he opened the box and showed his mother how to turn on the switch, how to speak to it, and how to replace the magic crystal that provides energy. Iluni listened blankly until her hands sank and the communication box was stuffed directly into her hands. She subconsciously clenched her fingers tightly, her fingertips turning white a little bit, as if she was holding her child's life. "Mom, remember. Don't worry, Mom won't disturb you often. When you are free, remember to send a message to Mom." I will," Gretel promised repeatedly, spread his arms, and gently hugged Iluni in his arms. "I just want to say this. If you can't get through, please don't worry too much. I'm fine, I pass by the nearby Mage Tower. If you can get through the message, I will write to you. He stepped back and boarded the ship, stood on the deck, and waved vigorously to the dock. Cecilia had already set off. The branches of the maple boat moved from clinging to the pier to pushing away. The boat turned in one direction and began to move northwest. In the sky, the turn that promised to guide them rushed down like an arrow and stopped on the top of the sail. After a rest, he spread his wings again and flew briskly against the waves. Dragon Island. Dragon Island. Let's go to Dragon Island. Let's go. Today's wind direction is really good. Gretel had been standing at the side of the ship, watching the pier getting smaller and smaller, and the people on the pier getting smaller and smaller. He could no longer see clearly with the naked eye, or even with the eagle eye technique. The figure with blonde hair and a wooden box in his hand still stood firmly on the spot, looking up eagerly. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1442. Greet. Come down and swim. The sun is so nice today and the sea water is warm. Thump. Water splashes several feet high covered the sky and hit the side of the ship, causing the whole ship to sway. The silver dragon rushed down from mid-air at high speed, plunged into the sea, swam happily for a few times, and then rushed out of the water with a splash. Gretel, come down. You go ahead and play, I won't come down dash. Greet lay on the side of the ship, shouting back with a wry smile. Sarala, for an adult silver dragon, a wave of this size is not too big, but for a human, it is a super big wave. 14 silver dragons too. Especially for the teenage silver dragons that have become human beings, their mobility is much lower than that of real silver dragons, and their support time is still quite limited. The waves are too big and swimming is too tiring. Sarala shook her head and got into the water with a splash. After a while, she jumped out of the sea, grabbed a big spindle-shaped fish, and slammed it onto the deck. Come and eat fish. Coming. Bernard rushed out eagerly. Start cutting the fish head, scraping the fish scales, filleting the fish, take out the big pot, and put down the seasonings. Gretel formed a layer of ice on the deck, lit a fire on the ice, and placed the cauldron on the fire. The big spindle-shaped fish was cut open piece by piece, and the bright red flesh was thrown into the pot and quickly rolled over. All the passengers on the ship gathered around. Apa held a bowl larger than a human head in his hand. He scooped out a bowl full of fish and placed it in front of Shiloh. Seeing the unicorn lowering its head and Zilliolu eating so that the soup splashed everywhere, he took another bowl and stood up on tiptoes to scoop out the soup for himself. The fish caught by Miss Sarah was at least a level 7 or 8 monster. So delicious. On the other side, Greet held a thin dagger, moved it like flying, and began to fillet the fish. Small pieces of translucent fish flew out along his dagger and fell into the hot soup. After rolling, a snow-white mass emerged, with a fragrant aroma. Sarah cheered, transformed into a human form, and rushed over to fish it out. Ashmoonsong cut half of the fish, wrapped it in vines, and sent it down to the cabin for storage. Idian was busy picking out the fattest part from the remaining fish, cut it, and put it on ice, waiting for her. Come and eat. Cut off the remaining part, carry it to the stern of the boat, and dump it onto the deck. A depression naturally appeared on the deck, which accommodated all the fish scales, fish meat, fish skin, and fish bones. In a moment, the tree roots plunged in crazily. At this meal, everyone has something to eat, and everyone has a full meal. They had been at sea for 10 days. For the first 5 days, I stayed on the same course as Cecilia, staying aloof and under the attention and care of the elf ship. For the next 5 days, we turned north and rode the wind and waves. There were terns accustomed to walking on this road to guide the way, and legendary ancient trees turned into ships to carry them, so the journey was safe and peaceful. There were no storms, no particularly big waves, and no powerful sea monsters crashed in looking for death. Gretel reads books and does research every day. Bernard practices with Ashmoon Song on the deck, and Idian. From time to time, Yudian jumped into the sea, dived deeply, and caught a few fish. Or practice running on the sea, which requires you to step on the waves and run around the boat. Except for the soles of your shoes, even the uppers are not allowed to get wet. Appa often traveled with him. For a giant deer that is tall and long, with its horns spread out to 4 meters, there is really no place on the boat for him to move around. After turning into a human form, I could run a few laps, and then when I returned to my original form, I really just took a step and walked from one end of the deck to the other. Fortunately, the silver moon deer is good at swimming and can even dive a little and jump into the sea to swim a few laps. Otherwise, in Bernard's words, if you're locked up on a boat all day long, you're going to die. After saying this, he grabbed Appa's antlers and pushed forward. Appa kept snorting and stepped hard on the deck with all 4 hooves. The muscles in his legs were tense and he was wrestling with the barbarian with all his strength. That's enough for you. There was a rumble in the cabin, and a branch flew out. First he hit the deer's leg, then the man's leg. After 2 screams of pain, both men were swept off the deck. Day after day, you kick me all the way. You're still kicking me even after you've kicked me in. I told you to wait 2 more days, and find an island for you guys to loosen up, but you keep kicking me day after day. Sister Servilia, calm down. After Gushu shouted, Gretel quickly ran out of the cabin and pressed his hand on the side of the ship. Calm down. I know you've been working hard, I'll arrange it, Cyrilla. Get a piece of ice. Coming. Cyrilla spread her wings and swooped down. A sufficient amount of ice dragon breath was sprayed onto the sea, and a crackling sound was heard. A piece of frosty white ice spread out on the sea waves in an instant. Greet reached out and threw a few seeds out, falling into the ice. Take root, sprout, grow, and spread outward. Soon, the surrounding ice expanded in a circle with the vine as the center, and then expanded in another circle. Sister Servilia, just hold on to this piece of ice and prevent it from floating away. APA. Bernard. If you want to practice, practice on the ice. Don't let Servilia, my sister's step hurts me. With such an arrangement, the ancient tree Servilia couldn't lose her temper. She stretched out a twig, patted Gretel gently, formed a wooden cup, and poured him a cup of tree sap mixed with syrup. Okay, let the 2 of them fight. According to Sister Cecilia, there will be a big island in a few days. Then I will send you to the island and relax for a few days. I also want to put down some roots. Sailing in the sea is really tiring. Her tree height is only 20 meters, and its trunk can only be hugged by 2 people. To become a 50-meter long and 8-meter wide ship that can withstand wind and waves at sea, all the extra volume needs to be grown. We also need to give them ventilation, block water, channel their excrement, make the deck strong for them to step on, and make the kitchen strong so they can live. Same thing, all for her to get out. She hasn't stepped on land for 10 days, and hasn't drank the sweet spring water for 10 days. Okay, sister, thank you for your hard work, go somewhere and have a good rest. The ship sailed for another 5 days, and the tern spread its wings and rushed down. He circled 3 times in a row on the top of the mast, landed on the side of the ship, opened his mouth and shouted. The island is ahead. The big island is ahead. On the sea, a series of islands appeared. Coral reefs stretch forward, embracing the clean white sand beach, and tall coconut trees sway their branches in the wind. On the edge of the beach, a native man built a pergola with his hands and raised his head. He stared blankly at the big boat and suddenly turned his head and yelled a few times. People rushed out of the woods behind. Jumping on the beach, waving feathers, wielding spears made of tree trunks, shouting. It seems we are not welcome here. I feel very confused and unhappy today, so I won't write any more for now. I will make up for it tomorrow. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1443. Hey, do we want to go up or not? Cirrara looked at Greet, and Greet looked at Cirrara. Idion crossed his arms, raised his chin, and looked at the natives running on the beach from the corner of his eye. Ashuedge stood lazily beside him, with an expression of "it's up to you." These natives, when I glanced at them with mystical vision, they were all first level, second level, and occasionally one was fifth level. She can clean these guys with one hand. Hey, Mr. Baka, are there any strong people on this island? Gretel raised his face, and first said hello and asked the turn Baka. It was Baka who brought them here. The scout's opinion must be considered first. The turn Baka had just dived into the water and picked up a fish about the same size as itself. Now it was raising its head and opening its mouth, trying to smooth the fish down its throat. Greet waited patiently for a short while before it swallowed the food, and didn't know where it went, and shook its feathers. I didn't see it. I just walked around twice and didn't see anyone stronger than me. He didn't think so either. Gretel just stretched out his mental power and explored the island as much as possible. He also asked about the nearby coral reefs, seaweed, sea breeze and nature. They all told him that there was no strong person around, or in other words, no one with a stronger aura than him. He himself is now level 15 after all, and can be considered a member of the strong, with 2 legends beside him. As long as you don't take the initiative to cause trouble, it's easy to just find a place to evacuate for 2 days, right? Then let's go up. Mr. Baka, please lead the way and find a place with fewer people, preferably no one. The soil is thicker, and it is best to have a clean spring and a small lake. Easy. Come with me yat. The turn Baka spread its snow-white wings and pierced the sky like sharp arrows. It rose, and rushed into the distance. Its red coral-like sharp beak pierced the air and made a sharp whistle. Its tail drew a faint straight line in the clouds. The island is not too small. At least in Greet's opinion, it would take an ordinary person 3 to 5 days to climb from the edge of the island to the top of the mountain in the center of the island. The tern flapped its wings, but it crossed the peak in an instant, plunged forward, and then circled back from the opposite side in a moment. It jumped onto the bow, its left wing tucked in, and its right wing spread out, pointing forward. Go around. Sister Servilia, go around from the right to the opposite side. There is a very clear stream. There are also high cliffs and flat hillsides. You can take route wherever you want. Following the guidance of the turn Baka, the maple boat made a light circle and turned to the back of the island. Taking advantage of the boat's speed to slow down, Greet performed a dragon flying technique for himself, and flew up with Cirrara, overlooking the entire island. The entire island is roughly in the shape of a figure of 8, consisting of one large and one small, connected by 2 rings. In the center of each ring, a high mountain peak rises. If you look closely, it should be 2 volcanic islands connected together. The southern part of the island is relatively flat, with dense and lush vegetation. At a glance, there is no exposed ground at all. The mountains in the north are steep, the terrain is rugged, and streams of various sizes divide the mountains into particularly fragmented parts. Countless streams, waterfalls, and rapids merge into a slightly larger river that rushes into the sea on the northern slope. Even after rushing through countless valleys and riverbeds, the river water is still clear, and after it merges into the sea, it does not even make the sea water appear half turbid. The crystal clear water slowly surrounds the island. Viewed from the air, their ship does not seem to be sailing on the sea, but like it is floating in the air. It's like wandering in the sky with nothing to rely on. Gretel groaned silently. If you are not in a hurry to go to Longdeo, it would be great to spend 10 days and a half vacation here. Although the water on Yangju Island is clear, the climate is cooler, unlike here, where you can lie down warm and comfortable. After flying around for a while, they landed on the ship. After a while, the maple boat arrived at the north side of the island. The terrain here is steep and there are almost no traces of people. Servilia rushed to the beach and couldn't wait to shake them off. This place is great. This place is great. I'm going to find a place to stand. You guys can help yourself. As he spoke, it shrank by a circle, and then shrunk by a circle. From 50 meters to 20 meters, from 20 meters to 10 meters, from 10 meters to 5 meters. It flew up into the sky and rushed up the towering north slope. After a while, among the green leaves on the mountain, there was a cluster of dazzling bright red on the edge of a silver ribbon hanging down. Greet looked up at the maple tree that spread its crown and enjoyed the sunshine, and couldn't help but smile. There is abundant sunshine, clear springs, and waterfalls, and fertile volcanic ash. This kind of environment is what trees dream of. I don't know how many days Servilia will stay, she has been working hard during this period. Boss, can I come up with you? Beside him, the oak staff made a weak sound. Gretel couldn't help but sigh. When I was on the boat, I put it on the table without saying a word. It didn't even know how to stretch out a few branches and roots to communicate with Servilia. Now I finally want to have some peace and quiet, but I have to catch up again. What did you do earlier? I asked you what did you do earlier? There is no way, after all, it is my own contracted oak staff. Gretel took it out of his pocket and put it on the ground. Go if you want. Boss, please take me up, I can't fly. Gretel sighed again and flew up with him. Saying hello to the maple tree, Servilia did everything she could, but asked that the oak stick be rooted far away and not interfere with her business. The place here is not big to begin with. One tree spread out at full strength is just enough for her to eat and drink. Adding another oak tree would be too frustrating. Gretel had nothing to say, so he could only take the oak staff a little further, and then a little further, and take root to the other side of the waterfall. Just after we settled down, there was a rustle in the woods and a person came out. At #UN%. The native, tall and muscular with a patterned face and holding a short spear with an obsidian tip, shouted at Gretel. Greet was too far away to hear clearly. When he got closer to within 3 trees, he heard what he was shouting. Get out of here. Don't stay here. You have entered God's territory. What? God's territory? What God? An indigenous God? There is a saying that if 2 legends, Servilia and Idian, go to the land of eagles, they can drive away the eagle god and snake god, and become the native gods themselves. Turnbaka is almost halfway to becoming a legend, and there is no problem at all if he wants to become a native god. Even he, a level 15 magician, can be worshipped as a god by a small indigenous tribe. Gretel smiled and shrugged, and asked again. Suddenly, there was a roar from the top of the mountain, and flames shot into the sky from the crater. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1444. A long roar shook the mountains. Greet looked up suddenly. At the same time, the crown of the oak stick opened rapidly, the branches stretched, and the leaves grew as fast as popping up, layer upon layer, intertwined with each other. As soon as Gretel raised his head, he saw a large green umbrella opening up in his field of vision, gradually becoming denser and sparse, covering the sky. The ends of the big umbrella were all bent downwards, as if they were trying to wrap him up inside. Ashu, you are blocking my view. Before a thought could be finished, a black and white brilliance flashed across the field of vision. Outside the canopy, a small snake appeared, coiling around the entire tree in the form of a giant python. Wrap around the tree trunk, pause, suddenly disappear, reappear, disappear again, shrink in a circle, coil around the tree trunk, disappear again. What is that on top? Little snake, what are you doing like this? Is that thing rushing up from the crater your natural enemy? While Gretel was thinking about it, he stepped out of the tree canopy and reached out to push aside the drooping branches. Standing outside, the trunk of the maple Servilia was already close at hand, and the bright red crown spread high, hanging over his head like a red flag. This, Sister Servilia, you don't have to worry about me so much, the volcano over there is still far away from us. You don't have to put on a show and try to drag me away at any time. The expressions of the native warriors who rushed over had changed. He waved his spear and chirped at Gretel, and even proficient in language had no time to translate. By the way, how far have the magicians of the council traveled and how many languages have they collected? Language comprehension. This spell can even translate what a group of natives on such a remote island say. In short, the native warrior was extremely excited and spoke very fast. Relying on the stumbling translation of language proficient, Gretel finally understood something. This island, this mountain, is under the protection of the gods. The mountain is a sacred mountain. The entire northern slope and the upper half of the southern mountainside are the territory of the gods. No one is allowed to go up the mountain except with the permission of the gods themselves. You can go up the mountain during the rainy season every year, but during the dry season, only great shamans who specialize in serving and offering sacrifices to the gods, and warriors who patrol and guard the mountains can go up the mountain. Now outsiders are on the mountain. Outsiders are coming up the mountain. The gods on the mountain were angered and punished. Look, it's starting to spit fire. Greet didn't feel much nervous. On the other side of the crater, despite the roar, he didn't feel any pressure. As for volcanic eruptions, eruptions. The intensity of this eruption is not big at all. Besides, even if it is a big eruption, at this distance, he still has time to escape. While I was thinking about it, the crown of the maple tree trembled and slowly shrank. From being twice as big in diameter as an oak tree, to only half as big, to the same size, the trunk slowly lowers and shrinks back to its original shape. The oak tree shrank together and returned to the form of an oak staff. It stretched out a branch and put it on Greet's shoulder. The oak staff then retracted upwards with the help of force, swaying slowly, retracted to the size of a pencil, and slid into Greet's chest pocket. The wind was blowing fiercely at the foot of the mountain. Idion stepped on the treetops and shot up like a sharp arrow. A little further away, Cyrilla rose into the air, spread her wings, and flew over quickly. I'm fine. Gretel couldn't help laughing, stood on tiptoes, and waved to the bottom of the mountain. Servilia branched out a branch, supported him, and raised it high. He waved his hand twice, then suddenly paused and turned his head upward. Whether it is Idion or Cyrilla, their attention is on him, but not all of it is on him. On the top of the mountain, on the top of the mountain. What's that on the top of the mountain? What is that shadowy figure among the billowing smoke, the spurting flames, and the magma that burns and ignites vegetation? I didn't feel anything just now, but now it's getting worse and worse. It seems like there's something really big. Gretel, you go down first. Idion passed by him like the wind, put down these words, and continued to rush upward. As soon as he said these words, the maple tree rose from the ground, hugged him and flew down the mountain. The entire tree trunk turned sideways and shrunk into a small boat 2 or 3 meters long, just enough to carry Gretel alone. The two sides of the tree crown spread out and turned into 3 pairs of green wings. One pair is extremely large and wide, holding the airflow steadily and pushing the boat down. The other 2 pairs are narrow and flexible, flapping rapidly to speed up the boat. Before Greet could react, the wind roared around him, and he had already passed 2 waterfalls from a slightly higher position on the mountainside, and floated directly to Cyrilla, who was rushing up. "Cyrilla, what's up there?" Greet leaned on the side of the boat and yelled. Above his head, Cyrilla's original form appeared, her wings flapped vigorously, and she passed by him. She lowered her head and glanced at him. "I don't know. It feels very familiar. Wait for me to take a look. I'll go with you." Gretel struggled to fly. Before he left the side of the ship, a branch wrapped around his waist and pulled him down hard. Servilia's complaining voice came. "Don't move. It's very tiring to protect you. It's smoke and fire, I don't want to stay in that kind of place. Let's go to the sea and wait for their results." "Are you afraid of that thing?" "Not afraid. But annoying," Maple Tree answered confidently. Gretel couldn't help laughing. Everything has a nemesis. For ancient trees that are rooted in one place and cannot be moved until they are at a high level, and it is not easy to move at a high level, flowing magma is probably the most annoying thing. Okay, since everyone is worried about him, as the weakest and least able one in the team, he'd better be honest. Greet thought like this, relaxed his body and sat on the boat, turned his head and waved to Cyrilla. After swiping twice, there was a sudden loud bang on the top of the mountain behind him. Gretel's eyes immediately froze. What is that thing that spewed out of the crater? Not like flames. Not like black smoke. Not even like rocks. Such a big lump, with smoke, fire, and dripping magma, rises high, and then rushes all the way down. Wherever the magma drips, a flame will ignite. Wherever the magma drips, the trees will wither and the branches and leaves will burn. That huge, chunky thing that looks a bit clumsy, yet powerful, what is it?" Before he could understand, Cyrilla had already raised her head and roared. The clear, high-pitched roar of the dragon spread throughout the fields, shaking the mountains and shaking the sea waves. Amidst the long roar, the huge flame also emitted a corresponding long roar, a low and deep roar. "Cyrilla! You are Cyrilla! You have grown up, you have grown into a big girl." It seems, it's okay." Servilia recognized the whistling sounds on the top of the mountain and gradually slowed down. "Finally, I turned a corner and found myself happily lying in a pool of blue waves at the foot of the mountain, swaying gently. There seems to be a dragon up there. Do you think your Sarah and that dragon know each other?" Magma and flames continued to drip, and black smoke slowly dispersed. Gretel finally saw that the thing in the air was indeed a dragon. "Look at that dragon head, look at those wings, especially, look at the pressure, he is indeed a dragon. It's just that her beauty was outclassed by Cyrilla. Cyrilla is slender, while the dragon is thick and short and fat. Cyrilla's whole body was pure silver, while the dragon's body was completely black, with patches of dark red, maybe because it was roasted, or maybe because the magma kept dripping down. A row of thorns on Cyrilla's back shone with cold light. Not to mention the thorns, the dragon's back was swollen in patches here and there, as if it had countless tumors. The only thing that can be compared is that the height, or volume, of the two dragons is basically similar. The dragon dripping with magma flew in the air, turned around and fell towards the crater. Cyrilla made a small circle, then turned back and shouted to Greet with a smile. "Gretel, come up with me. Come up as a dragon." "Gretel." Only a few days after I advanced to level 15, I transformed into an adult silver dragon and could only hold it for 5 minutes. However, when Cyrilla called, he could only bite the bullet and turn into a young silver dragon, flap his wings and fly up. Cyrilla stood side by side with him, always looking back. As soon as they reached the top, the dragon in the crater poked its head out. "Cyrilla, is this your mate? He's so little." "Stop talking nonsense." Cyrilla sprayed a cloud of cold mist into the crater. Compared with the full force of the ice breath, this cold mist can only be regarded as a greeting, or a loud bah. Even so, the cold mist the size of a house fell into the crater, and the rolling magma immediately froze. With a clicking sound, large swaths of magma condensed into rocks, a few rolled at the bottom, and sprayed high into the sky. Gretel is a human. This is his transformed appearance. How small. Have you forgotten that I should be as big as him? Yes, the black and red dragon sank into the magma, rolled over comfortably, and brought more sparks to splash upward. It poked its head out of the magma again and looked at Cyrilla up and down. Cyrilla, I remember you are much younger than me. You should be only 50, 60, no, more than 70 right now. Why do you grow up so fast? I'm so awesome, Cyrilla puffed up her chest proudly. He turned around in a circle and turned to Gretel. Greet, let me introduce to you. This is Gerson de los Santos Fitzgerald, the lava dragon. He used to live quite close to our home, and he often fished things from the volcano. Oh! Gretel raised his eyebrows vigorously. Volcanoes often spew out some good things, such as gold nuggets, silver nuggets, various gemstones. Being able to freely swim in the magma and fish out things from it is an ability that most dragons would envy. No wonder Cyrilla is so impressed by him. Hello, Mr. Gerson, he nodded politely. The lava dragon poked out a little more from the magma and looked him up and down. Cyrilla said, you are a healer? A very powerful one? Then, can you do me a favor? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1445. Healers are popular wherever they go. This was Greet's first thought. I have never cured a dragon. I have absolutely no idea about the dragon's body structure and the flow of elements within the dragon's body. Except for the silver dragon, I have seen Cyrilla's appearance, and I have transformed into the silver dragon form. I don't understand the other dragons at all. This was Gretel's second thought. What's wrong with this dragon? If I had surgery, I wouldn't be able to cut it. Given its level, for the limited wishing spell to be effective, 10 or 8 may not be enough. This was Gretel's third and last thought. Before he could change his thoughts, the lava dragon Gerson rumbled on. 30 years ago, I swallowed a big rock under this volcano. It felt good when I first swallowed it, but not long after I swallowed it, I started to feel uncomfortable, and I still feel uncomfortable until now. Mr. Healer, can you help me? Is this really going to treat long? Greet glanced at Cyrilla subconsciously. Cyrilla hovered at the edge of the magma pool, trying to keep herself as far away from the magma as possible while still keeping a distance that she could rush over at any time. Seeing Greet's eyes, he wagged his tail slightly. Greet, if you think it's okay, just show it to him. Gerson is quite good. When he lived near us, many of the bathhouses we used to bathe in were dug out by him. Bathtub. Dig it out. Gretel first imagined a black and red head lying in the magma, peeping at other dragons taking a bath. Thinking about it again, neither the golden dragon nor the silver dragon seems to like soaking in lava. So it's an abandoned fire vent that was used to convert a bath? When Greet looked at Gerson again, he felt like a diligent digger, and then a diligent excavator. Soon, I imagined a diligent plumber running and jumping in the magma, breaking huge rocks and correcting the flow of the magma. Hey, lava dragons like volcanic craters. They like to soak in the magma and dig dragon nests in the magma when they have nothing to do. Even the young dragons that have just been separated need to find a small crater to live in. While digging a house for yourself, dredge out the lava. When the baby dragon grows up and needs to change its house, the small dredged crater will be tidied up and used as a natural bath. So what kind of rock was that you were eating? How big was it? What shape was it? Greet began to inquire. After 30 years of eating a stone, I still feel uncomfortable. Could this be an intestinal obstruction? By the way, how tough is the dragon's intestines? How can he still survive after being blocked for 30 years? I don't know. Jerson shook his head and threw out a series of magma ideas. I don't know. I just thought it was edible, so I ate it. It's probably this big. It raised a paw and gestured. The magma in front of him rolled and condensed, first forming a piece the size of a table, then the size of a sofa, and then the size of a double bed. Gretel was sweating. Wait a minute. This stone is bigger than your throat. Did you bite it into pieces and swallow it, or did you swallow it whole? Of course, swallow it whole. Jerson gave him a strange look, then turned to look at Cyrilla. Cyrilla, didn't you tell him? We dragons eat a lot of food. We don't swallow it from the throat to the stomach. We swallow it into the natural space, store it, and digest it slowly. Come on. If it is swallowed into the natural space and digested slowly, it will not go through the digestive tract, and if it does not go through the digestive tract, it is not an intestinal obstruction in the physical sense. The good news was that no surgery was needed, but the bad news was that if it wasn't intestinal obstruction, he couldn't figure out what the problem was for the time being. Greet asked while thinking intently. Is the stone still there? Or, are the fragments still there? No more, I've finished eating a long time ago. Jerson shook his head again and sank a little into the magma, leaving only his head on the surface of the magma. I thought I was overeating, but I still felt uncomfortable after eating. I haven't felt comfortable for all these years. How does it feel? Does it hurt? It doesn't hurt. A loud roar erupted from the crater. The magma burst, and balls of flames erupted outward. From a distance, Greet seemed to hear the natives' exclamations and screams, more than one. Ouch! Greet screamed. Taking advantage of the rain of fire, he quickly exited the crater and immediately followed the sound and rushed towards the direction where the scream came from. Fortunately, he was quite proficient in casting spells in the silver dragon form, especially the healing spell. Seeing the natives struggling in the magma, a series of spells such as floating, cleaning, and healing were thrown out. Finally, the floating technique and the strong wind blew these natives far away, to a place where they would not be sprayed by the lava. Alas, several dragons are chatting. Why are they so close? Look at the ground, there are pandanus, mangoes, avocados, bananas, huge shells, bright pearls, birds with brilliant feathers, ferocious beasts. They all seem to be specialties on the island, but none of them are what the lava dragon likes to eat or play with. The lava dragon, which lives in the huge lava lake at the heart of the volcano, only likes collections that will not be burned to ashes by the magma. Metals, gems, magic weapons, and more. Obviously, these natives have been living with the lava dragon for at least 30 years, and they still haven't figured out how to please their gods. Greet sighed, rolled up the collection, put it on the floating saucer and dragged it back. Returning to the crater, Cyrilla had transformed into an elf form and created a wind barrier for herself. The wind barrier was covered with a cloud of water mist. She chatted with Jerson without saying a word. Why did you move here? There is a volcano here. There is only so much space on Dragon Island. If we can't live in it anymore, don't we have to move out? No, I mean, how did you find such a place? This is an island. It's an island. Such a big sea, such a lonely island, how did you find it? The smell of the volcano is so good. I smelled it and moved here. Can you smell it from so far away? That's not true. When I was looking for a place to live, I happened to hear migrating birds saying that there was a volcanic eruption here. By the way, what about you? How did you escape? How did you grow up so fast? Because I'm awesome, Cyrilla raised her head high and her pretty face shone. But Gretel is still great. Gretel is the most powerful. I followed him and studied those things together. After studying and studying, I advanced. Ahem. Gretel also released the dragon-shaped transformation, fell next to her, and pushed the floating disc into the crater. Cyrilla's eyes widened when she saw the plate full of shells and pearls floating on the lava. On the contrary, Jerson sighed in annoyance. It's these again, it's these again. It's these every time. If they hadn't just asked me to be okay and not to spray lava, I would have driven them away. These things are very good. Cyrilla grabbed Gretel, pulled his arm and hid it behind her, and shook him hard twice. Jerson raised his head a little from the magma, and then sank down again with a crash. You can take it if you like it, but I don't want it. As a reward, can you let your partner treat me? What's wrong with you? I'm itchy. It's itchy everywhere. Jerson rolled in the lava. The magma splashed, and Cyrilla screamed in surprise, and quickly grabbed Gretel and flew back. The lava dragon sank into the crater. After a while, there was a rumbling sound from below, going east and west, like a huge creature struggling to hit the inner wall of the mountain. Boom! 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 What else but itching? After a while, the lava dragon emerged from the magma. Gretel shouted loudly to him, and Jerson floated out little by little, with lava flowing down from his body. There's still swelling. Look, it's swollen here, it's swollen here, it's swollen here too, it's lumpy and bumpy. Gretel followed his directions. There are large and small lumps everywhere on the lava dragon's back, under the base of its wings, and on its tail. The small one is as big as an egg, so the big one can hold it together with its arms and hold the big one up with its dragon scales. Under the dragon scales, there was a popping sound from time to time, and a ball of something that looked like magma and a little smelly exploded. Sulfur. No, not sulfur. Greet sniffed. After staying in the volcanic environment for too long, he felt that his sense of smell had deteriorated a bit. Are these things allergic? Is it the urticaria and wheels of the dragon clan? Is it a tumor or something else? He couldn't figure out why at the moment, so he first took a picture of a cloud chamber to see if there was any radiation in this thing. However, not to mention PM 2.5, even PM 10 on the magma exceeded the standard by countless times, and it was impossible to see anything in the cloud chamber. I took out the Geiger counter again and shook it, but nothing happened. Throwing out the secret eye, he looked at the lumps carefully and couldn't help but feel angry. Under the dragon scales, in the gaps between the dragon scales, large and small stones are stuck together. There are porous and loose pumice, and there are hard and smooth obsidian. I mean, have you considered taking a shower first? Wash off those stones next to the lump. Maybe if you wash it off, it will stop itching. It only hurts after you wash it off. It feels better if you rub it like this. Jerson shouted loudly. Gretel sighed and shouted back. Then can you bear it for a while? Let me take a sample and see what is in this mass. If you agree, you can come out for a while and go to a cooler place on the edge. I can't see you in the magma. The ground was shaken. Jerson slowly crawled out, walked to the edge of the fire pool, and lay down on the crater's ring wall. Greet held up the shield, walked closer, and released several golden skeletons to take samples. The long knife in the skeleton's hand pried open the dragon scales, slashed hard, and cut off an unknown mass. With a crackle, the thing suddenly exploded, and hot magma poured over the skeleton. Gretel. Luckily I have plenty of skeletons on hand. If I were to go to see a doctor in person, I would risk my life.